Hello everyone, welcome back to the NVivo workshop. This is the second workshop that we are running on the software at Middlesex University, Mauritius. And today we'll discuss a few new things. I hope you had the chance to go through the first tutorial, which is online on the CeMaSTeL website. If not, please do go through the tutorial, and then you can come back to this one later. So, a brief recap of what we've done at the end of the first tutorial is talk a little bit about the blank project and the sample project. I think it is quite obvious that the sample project is a project that comes with NVivo software, the default project, and the blank project is whatever you have transcribed and that you want to analyze. So this is what we did last time, and a few things was about the interface. Quickly going through them would be the different parts of the interface, and I'll let you discover that. We've covered that in the first tutorial, and for more details you can always go back to the first tutorial, or I think I have some more details. Yes, anyway, this is for the tabs. If you want to pause the video and then read, fine, but we've covered that before. And that's the tabs. The ribbons would be here. Then we had the upper navigation view, the lower navigation view, the list view, and finally the detail view. Anyway, that's what we did last time, and today we'll introduce a few things. The next slide, I think, will give you an idea. So um, I'll discuss a little bit on the sample project and the new project uh, buttons, and then I'll talk about importing files, auto coding, and query, and then visualization of your basic analysis based on auto coding. Um, right. So if we start off with NVivo, I want to let's start this here. Right. So just wanted to show you a little bit on the sample project. So there you go. The sample project comes with NVivo. It's a default project. If you have the chance to click on it and have a look at the file. So this is what I want to discuss, and also some of the files that come up with the default project. Now, once you open the sample project, you'll see that the source is highlighted, which means all these things are under the source. If I click on node, you'll see these things change, and classification. So for today, I'll only talk about source and nodes based on the auto coding. I'll explain what auto coding is, but right now let's start with the source. Now the sources are what you have. So basically, uh, this, like I've said, is the sample project, which means they are default folders. You can delete, you can create new folder. For example, I can right click and create new folder here. If I want to delete something here, I can always right click and delete. So it's up to you, but I think these folders are useful. But how you name them, it's up to you. For example, I think they are quite obvious. In interviews, I'll have all the interviews that I've conducted here. They could be Microsoft Word file, they could be clips, they could be audio files, and so on. And these are the people who ran the interview. So if I click on Barbara here, you'll see that the Barbara file is open, right? So Barbara here, sorry, these are the people. Barbara would be the person who's been interviewed. Sorry, Henry is the person who conducted the interview. So Henry is asking the question and Barbara is answering those questions. If I click on Margaret here, same. Nancy is asking the question, but Margaret is the one answering them. So the file's been named based on the interviewee's identity. Now let me close this. So yeah, I was talking about this. The file's been labeled in a very obvious way. Under literature, it could be the PDF files, the journals, the articles that you've been reading, and they are saved and they've been imported into this folder. Survey clearly could be an Excel file, and these are the survey responses that you've collected. So these are the internal sources, and like I've said, they are obvious uh, files. The labeling, the way they've been labeled. If you want to delete some, if you want to add some, it's up to you. And I'll let you play with this and add and delete some new folders. I think for today, let's focus on this one. So that would be the sample project NVivo file, and these are clearly, like I've said, the sources. What I want to talk about is let's go to the interviews. So I can open Susan, like I've said, and this is one way to open the default interviews. Now, for today, I don't want to only work on the sample project, because one of the thing that I want to do is to show you how to uh, import the data, the interview files in NVivo. Now these are the samples, so clearly they've already been imported and they come with the software. So for the sake of explanation, we'll close this and open a new project, and then hence show you how you can import the files. So for the time being, let's close this and let's open a new project. It's a blank project, so I can do this. I can click on blank project, and you will have uh, a window which pops up, and you can give it a title. So I can call it workshop 2 mum, so Middlesex University, Mauritius. A description, it helps. This is for the online tutorial, and as you can see, whatever I've typed here, let me just remove the hyphen and see. Yeah, let me just remove the hyphen. It goes, whatever I've typed here will by default appear on the file name. Now you can browse by default. I've changed my setting where all the files are saved on the desktop. It's up to you. I will save it on desktop and later move it to the proper subfolders. I would advise that you click on this because it keeps a log on the actions, on the things that you're going to change in your project. So good to click on this. Up to you where you want to save it, like I've said, and we're going to click OK. Right, so this is a blank project. I can close it just to show you where it is on the desktop. There you go. So that's the sample project. That's the new project, the blank project. Now I can always, let me just close this. I can always move it then to here, because I'm working on this folder. It's up to you. I mean, I don't quite like my desktop to be completely filled with files, so I might want to move this here because everything here will be for workshop 2. Then again, if you want to double click, let's do that. And all I want to do is now move some files, import some files here in NVivo. Does take a while. Right, so this is the file that we've just created, and if I want to, as you can see now, internal folder is pretty much empty, so I can create a folder under external, and I can call it interviews. and description will be a few files from the default NVivo project for workshop purpose only. Yeah, right. So it helps. There you go. And what I want to do is bring a few of the files. I'm sure you saw quite. There were, I think, 14 files in the sample project. I'm not gonna bring them all. Let's say now you want to bring a few files. So that's what I want to do here. Bring some files, import some files. So how to do this? What I can do, first of all, we were here. I can click on this tab, the data tab, and there you go. These are the buttons that you can use to import your files. Clearly, documents would be, for example, Microsoft Word file. PDF will be the PDF files. Survey could be the Excel sheet. We have audios, videos, pictures, and memos. I'm not going to talk too much about these things. For today, we'll just keep it simple and use the documents, which is the Microsoft Word file. But please go ahead and see what these things do. Now, data. I can click on documents, which brings me to the window where I can select the files. So um, there you go, workshop 2, NVivo files, and instead of 14 files, let's say these are the 6 files I want to import. I could import one, I could import up to 6, well, up to 6 because I have 6 in the folder, and I can select them and click on open. Let's choose 5 and click on open. So Thomas is one that we haven't chosen, and I can click on open, and it will tell me where it's going. So right, so there you go. The file's been imported here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As you can see, Thomas is not there. Now, that's one way of importing the file. Another way of importing would be drag and drop, which means that's why I didn't choose Thomas NVivo files, and I can drag it here, and I get Thomas here. So as you can see, the disadvantage of drag and drop is I have to fill this up again. So same as the previous 5 imported docs, something like that, right? Okay, so all these 6 files are under the interview folder, which is under the internals. We are only focusing on interviews. Later we'll do literature review workshops and so on NVivo. So right now let's keep it simple. As you can see, it's 0 notes and 0 references. That's because we haven't done anything on these files, and we just want to work a little bit on them and see what happens. So I can click on Barbara, for example, and the Barbara window will open here. So basically, this is the first question, my research question, my research question, and Henry is the one asking those questions. Yeah, Henry is the one asking those questions, and Barbara is answering those questions. As you can see, that's why the file name is Barbara. Henry asks the second question, and Barbara answers, and so on and so forth. And then we have another research question, and same process. Now, the reason, one thing we want to do now is once we've imported the file, or I would advise that this is done even before importing the files, is for you to clean your data. Now, that's a term that we use to sort out the data. What does that mean? It means that it helps if you arrange your transcribe interviews in a paragraph style. For those who've done Microsoft Word, I think would know what I mean here. So there are 2 ways of doing it. You can do it before you import it, which means when the files are still in your folder here, Microsoft Word file, you can edit them in Microsoft Word file, and then import on NVivo. Otherwise, which I wouldn't advise, bring them in NVivo, import them in NVivo, then click on edit, and then you can edit the file here, Barbara and Dorothy and Margaret, Robert, Susan, Thomas. I would always advise that you do whatever we're going to do in Word before you import. So edit them, then import them on NVivo. So what I mean here is, well, because I've already imported, let me do the editing here, and it's done. So I'm just going to show you what exactly I mean here. So for example, if I click on edit, before I clicked on edit, all this were kind of disabled. Once I click on edit, you will see that these things are active now. So for example, what I want NVivo to do is to separate the research question, question number 1, with the question being asked by Henry, right? Who is the interviewer? And then I want the person answering the question. I want to know who's answering the question, and then I want to know the answers, the responses from those interviewees. So Henry is the interviewer. Henry's question is here. Let me start again. Research question. Henry is the interviewer. The question asked by the interviewer is here. Barbara is the interviewee, and the response from Barbara is here. And then the same thing happened again. Henry asked another question, and so on. Now, I want NVivo to do this, to code this, because I want NVivo to separate the questions and the answers and the interviewers and the interviewees and so on. Now, one thing that I can do is, for example, the research question, I can put it under heading 1. Now, you can choose anything you want, but like I said, let's keep it simple. So I might want to keep the research question under heading 1. Then Henry being the interviewer, I can highlight, I can use a paragraphing style for Henry, for the person asking the question, as heading 2. Again, this is very arbitrary. You can do whatever you want as long as you keep all this consistent for all the files. Then the questions that been asked by Henry could have a paragraphing style called interviewer. It's somewhere here. There you go. That's the question asked. So every time Henry is going to ask the question will be formatted as a paragraphing style known as interviewer. Then Barbara answers, and this can be the name. Barbara can be heading 2, and the responses by Barbara could be, for example, normal. You can call it heading 3, whatever you want, but like I said, the whole point is to keep it consistent. If I decide to choose to highlight this and format it as a paragraphing style for as normal, then please keep it consistent. So that's quickly again. The research question is heading 1, the interviewer is heading 2, the question by the interviewer is interviewer, the person answering is heading 2 again, and the response by the interviewee is, for example, normal. Let's check this again. So I reckon this one should be that should be heading 2, and that should be heading 2. That should be interviewer, and that should be normal. Let's check. Heading 2 for Barbara. This should be interviewer, and this should be normal. There you go. So NVivo now separating these things, and it helps. That's what I want to show you today. That's what we want NVivo to do, auto coding, and so on. So if I come back to the second research question, heading 1. Anyway, so this is the reason we want to do this, is to allow NVivo to do auto code, and this means that NVivo will automatically code the data for you. And the advantage here is NVivo will organize the headings just like we've done, and uh, it helps to differentiate between. I mentioned this before. It helps differentiating between interviewees, response and questions and research questions and so on. Um, Auto coding, the advantage is it is the initial way of organizing your data before doing any analysis. So I strongly recommend that you do this, and it will be very handy later on when we do the analysis. Anyway, right. One thing we can do now is uh, let's see if I can close this right. Just to show you what just happened. So all these files have been formatted in the respective paragraphing style. If I can highlight them, so right click, auto code. Let's keep it this way because that's what we've done, paragraph style. And let's check, let's do one by one. Let's just do heading 1 today and see what happens. So if I move, I select heading 1 and I move it to the right, click next, and heading 1, remember, the research question number 1. So I want to call it a name. So it's a new code. Remember what node? Remember what are nodes? Nodes are containers. You're gonna put your code in the nodes. So it's a new node. We're gonna choose a new node. It's in the nodes, and I can call it as interview questions. There you go. So interview questions or research questions rather. Uh, if it's heading number 1, it should be research questions, right? So I can click on finish, and as you can see now, uh, these are the nodes. I will explain those numbers maybe later. If I click on nodes, I've just created the research question node. That's the parent node. If I click on the plus, the 6 research questions in each, obviously there were the same 6 questions in all the files, in all 6 files, they are here. So for example, if I click on the first one, I'll give you a few seconds to think about it and think about what we are going to get. So you can pause the video, or let me just click on it and see what we get. So what we get is clearly for question number 1, Henry's questions, Barbara's answer, and so on. And then Henry's questions to Dorothy, then Nancy's question to Margaret, and so on and so forth. So it takes whatever was formatted as heading 1 and takes everything under that and put that in a file in a child node. So that's the parent node, these are the child node, and everything connected to question number 1 are here. So let me quickly scroll down, and you'll see that all you're gonna get here is question number 1. There's nothing else. So right, so question number 1, and it tells you where it comes from. So basically, this comes from Barbara's Word document. And briefly, let me just say it again. Question number 1, Henry asked the question, Barbara answered. Henry asked more questions. Still on the first research question, it was Barbara answered. Henry asked third question, Barbara answered, and so on and so forth. And that's the end of the Barbara file for question number 1, which we've identified as research questions. Then in Dorothy's Word document, there was again question number 1, same question everywhere. So you'll have it here. Not much discussed between Henry and Dorothy compared to Henry and Barbara. That's the end of it. And then in the third file, Margaret, same question again. Same research question again, connection to Down East. And between Nancy, so Nancy is now asking the question at Henry, and Nancy and Margaret, again, not too many questions. That's the end of the file. Margaret, and so on and so forth. That's what Robert starts here. Henry and Robert conversing, and then it stops here. Then you have Susan file, and so on and so forth. So this would be separating question 1, and I can do the same thing if I want to click on question number 2 and see what's been happening there. So question number 2, and the conversation between the interviewer and the interviewee. That's the research question, that's the specific question asked, and that would be the interviewee's response. Right. What we can do here is I can query, I can ask a few things. I can ask NVivo to do a few things. So what we can do is, for example, I can go and query, and I'm just gonna do these 2 things here today. And first, let's do the word frequency, and second, the text search. The reason I'm hesitating is I'm still thinking what text search I can do, but don't worry, we will find something. So let's go to the source, and let's just use Barbara's. Let's close this, and let's use Barbara. You can use all of them if you want, but query, and I can click on word frequency, and the reason is I want to know what's the most frequent word that Barbara has been using. Now, it's for some people that's very important because clearly if someone is using, I mean, my personal research is on mass education. So if I hear the word hate, dislike, uh, anxiety, panicking, so I can then form a theme if I see that those words are being repeated a lot of times. So that's why word frequency is important. And I can click on it, and sorry, all sources or selected items rather. So if I click on, yeah, let me just discuss this. If I click on internals and click here, sorry, no, sorry, interviews, there you go. If I click, let me just start this again. If I tick this box and click on here, interviews will be open, and by default there's a tick, which means all the 6 interviews have been selected. Now, like I've said before, you can only do Barbara's, or you can do all of them, or you can do some of them. If I unclick this, they disappear. If I unclick this, then it disappears again. So if you do not want all of them, then sorry, click here, interviews. I'm not ticking anything here. And if you want to look at Barbara's only, fine, you can do focus only on Barbara's. So it's up to you. Why not just do all of them and see what happens? So let's click on this. By default they're all ticked. So the query that I'm going to run regarding word frequency will be for all these 6 interviews, transcribe interviews. So if I click OK, and then I run the query. Sorry, I should have discussed this. So keep this the way it is. The minimum length, I mean, it's not gonna detect anything less than 3-letter word, and it's up to you. You can write 4. I think 4 is a bit extreme. I think 3 is the best one. So for example, the word I, the word do, the word go wouldn't be considered. You would see here that all these words have at least 3 characters, and it just gives you the result of your query. And six times people have, sorry, 91 times people have used the word, these six people have used the word people, 75 times they've used the word east, and so on and so forth. So that would be the result of your word frequency. Now you can do quite a few things here. You can visualize the result. So that's the summary here. Can you see it? Summary. I can click on word cloud and get something like this. Right. So right. So the bigger the word, it means the more frequent it's been used. If you remember, people was had the maximum frequency there, and so on. So you can change the style here. So well, sorry, I don't think we should waste time too much here, but you can just click and see what happens. Um, right. Okay. Anyway, that's the word cloud. You can use this to show your results. Again, remember we were just doing the word frequency. You can have a tree map. Personally, I don't fancy this. It's the same thing. So people has been used most frequently than East and Think, Henry, and so on. It's not something that tickles my fancy, but it's up to you. If you want to use it, fine. And right, so this is just a visualization of the most frequent word. And I've clicked on cluster analysis. So not sure it's the right time to talk about this right now. So I think to complete today's tutorial, I would like to actually talk about the last thing, which is the text search. I think, yeah. So let's close this. I hope you understood what we've been trying to do here. I'm going to close this now. And text search, if I want to find one particular word. So I want to find, for example, family, let's say, and selected items. Again, if I click on this, by default interviews, all of them has been ticked, and these have all these six interviews will be considered for the analysis. And I click OK, and I run query, and it tells me that Barbara has used the word three times, Dorothy three, Margaret two, Susan five, and obviously the other two, so Thomas and Robert hasn't they haven't used the word. So again, I can click on these things. So I'll let you discover a little bit. So this just give me the referencing, the references where we've been getting that word from, and if I click on text, it shows me where exactly they are. And the word tree is probably for some people. Remember, I've just used an arbitrary word, family, because I before closing the previous file, I saw the word. When you run your interviews, you would know and you would feel, you would know which word that you want to find and to query. So it will make more sense if you run this yourself with your transcribe interview and then look for a word search. Um, these things tells me how the word family has been used and how they were linked. So it won't make sense if I just read this unless you've read a little bit about those six interviews. So this is the end of the tutorial. What I would ask you is at least go through, if you remember the first tutorial, it's extremely important to read the interviews, the one that you've transcribed in details. There are the steps mentioned there. Uh, First, go through them quickly. Then each and every single line and word would be important. So you have to do this, then only these things will make sense to you. So, what we've done today briefly, all I've explained is the difference between sample project and blank project. Then I've talked about importing some files. Then what we did was two things uh, on query, which was the word frequency and the text search. Um, this is the second part of NVivo, is the really most basic thing. I've discussed the advantages of doing auto coding. That's what we've done, separating question answers, interviews, and so on and so forth. Uh, I will run more sessions with the what I've been doing. This has been covered in the Master's Management Program, so it will be uploaded on our channel and CeMaSTeL website. Keep an eye for more tutorials. Thank you very much.